First, I'd like to introduce myself. For any of you who don't know me, I'm Kathy Ocean. I'm the second selectman in the town of Washington. To my left is Wesley Daniel, first selectman. To my right is Don Grinnell, third selectman. And Ann Dean is over here. She is our town clerk and will be recording some of the comments. Just a reminder to everybody to please sign in. There's a sheet in the back. Sign your name and address for the record. In order to get through tonight's proceedings in a timely way, I ask that you wait to be recognized before speaking, state your name and address, and we're going to limit the comments to 3 minutes. If additional time is necessary, we can hear other comments. We have a lot of people here who would like to be heard, and I'd like everybody to have a fair chance. The room is very crowded. We don't have an amplification system, so thank you. So please listen and as best as you can.
All right, let me see if I can kind of take everybody as to where we've been. Kathy did that briefly. 4 years ago we started, we asked for volunteers to come forward, advertised for volunteers. We came forward, we spent 4 years working on the draft, revising the land use ordinance that had been originally adopted in 1988. Since then it had, I think, 11 different amendments to that. So it has gotten kind of wordy in places, state laws, state rules, state regulations, recommendations from the State Planning Office, and actually has changed since 1988. The first one, under the land use district, you see a resource protection district. That is the district that was previously known in the old ordinance as a conservation district. It is essentially, for lack of a better term, either swampland or wetlands that are designated to round over the town by either DEP or Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. That was the same district that we had in 1988. And about 2 to 3 years ago, Inland Fisheries and Wildlife increased the size of that in the town. We had nothing to do with that. So that increased it. My guess is I haven't done an acre by acreage comparison, but probably by about 50%.
When you said grandfather, like Wesley and his fields, how far back does that go? Before the 1988?
Yes, it does.
If he was doing that before 1988, that doesn't affect it.
If he was doing it before 1988, he was grandfathered into the old ordinance.
That's what I want.
If he's doing it today, he'll be grandfathered into the revised ordinance. It's still the same.
It was before the first comprehensive.
That's correct. Before the first land use ordinance was adopted.
Thanks.
John?
Why the change from conservation district to resource protection difference? What is the difference in definition of a resource protection zone and a conservation zone?
Yeah, I'll just add to that. The old conservation district was a district that we basically defined here using state nomenclature. That nomenclature is now changed, and all we've done is go to the new name so that when the state agencies that review this review it, we aren't going to get a call saying, you know, what's this conservation district all about? We're using their name. The actual definition has not changed. The one thing that has changed is the shoreland limited residential area is, under the state rules, has changed from what it used to be, and it now allows more residential uses than it used to. So what actually has happened here is the shoreland area going into the shoreland limited residential has reduced the amount of regulation on that area. There's more residential uses are allowed under the new state rules than used to be. So by going to this, changing to this new district from our old district, I mean, we're really not changing the district, we're changing the ability of residential uses in that district.
I got to clarify that. You said a lot about the shoreline district.
Right.
But my question was about the resource protection zone.
The
and
resource
difference between
protection-
Conservation.
The state used to call that the conservation district. Now they call it resource protection.
Okay, so
Really,
talk
nothing
about
has
that,
changed,
though. Well, I was
other than
asking
the
about
name.
that, not
Right.
about shoreline,
Right, nothing has changed in that district other than the name.
and they've grown.
And they've grown.
The reason it has grown, and Don touched on this, but it's actually very simple. When we adopted the ordinance in 1988, we put everything into the conservation district that was on the Inland Fisheries Wildlife Resource Protection Map. They actually called it that then, but it was the conservation district, which is why they've changed the name a little bit to make all that the same. And over the years, that map has changed. And whether we adopt this or not, the state still regulates these zones as resource protection zones. If we do nothing today, those zones are still in resource protection under state rule, and we have to treat them that way, whether we adopt it or not, regardless of what was in the old ordinance. This is the mandatory state shoreland zoning laws that we're talking about.
Yes.
I have kind of a fun technical question. Being that gravel pits, usually they dig down to the watermark, why does it make sense to put a commercial district in an area where you're gonna lower the soil closer to the water table than you would have in any other part of the town?
In reality, they can't dig down to the watermark. They have to stay at least 15 feet or something. I forgot now. I think it's 15 feet above the water table.
Yeah.
So that gives them 15, that would give the place to put 15 feet, enough to get a foundation in, whatever else. And we're not talking about.
Oh, I'm talking septics.
Oh, even septic, I mean, you can put septics in, I mean, I'm not a septic designer, but they can do a soil test and put it in there, so. Okay,
That expansion, which the ordinance says on that read first, the proposal, says that yes, we're only changing the terms from conservation to shoreline. This is confirmed, its name. But again, it is also confirmed that it's actually expanded the land that's taken from each of the property owners who are affected. Inside of Title 38, that's section 430-something to 440-something, there's 438A, which each of you have a copy of. It was the last one given there that requires notice to the landowners. So you might want to give a look at that one, whether the town has fulfilled its obligation, starting there. If your property is going to get put into a resource protection zone, the very law that we're saying you have to comply with says that the town is responsible for giving letters to all the property owners whose land is going to fall into resource protection. Has that been done?
not that I know of.
Well, it's kind of a moot point then at this point, isn't it?
You can't really enact this thing.
No, you can't.
Okay, let's move on to the next issue.
I'm gonna ask anybody who has a question or makes a comment to please state their name for the record.
John Stewart.
Dave Martucci. Yeah, you're right about that. If you're taking land that has not previously been in resource protection and putting it into a new district. However, there is one exception to that rule, and the exception to that rule is if there's a mandatory state designation on an area, nobody has to notify anybody. The state does that. And whether we adopt this or not, those areas are already in that area, and they have already been in that area for at least 8 years.
So frankly, sir, why are we here then? I mean, really, if it doesn't matter what we say, if it's the state that's gonna do it, why are we wasting everybody's time? Let's just go home and eat cake.
Leave.
You know, I mean, come on.
Okay,
John, we're gonna continue. Don, please continue.
okay, I've got to move on here. All right, we already caught some on the errata sheet that you got there. There's already some things that I'll just revisit. Top of page 5, again, number 3, any additional areas to be designated as part, that says conservation district. That was left from before, one we didn't have to catch. That should be resource protection district there. All right, let's go over to page 8, under administrative and enforcement. one of the things that was not clear to the citizens before is, when what, okay,
Wait, excuse me, I got a question on this last article here, which is pertinent. Section 4, it shall include wildlife habitats and deer wintering yards specifically designated for protection by the Maine Department of Inland Fisheries. Is there any notification as who land falls under that? Has the town provided anybody notification that wintering yards are in their fields, or?
that's the future, that's in the future, and the inland fisheries and wildlife would have to be the one that would notify them, not the town.
For
Okay?
under the Resource Protection District, A1 and A2, it's not clear